What if I told you that a single father working the night shift at a downtown office building would stumble upon a collapsing CEO in a darkened hallway, clutching a briefcase that contained evidence of a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of government? That this ordinary maintenance worker, Liam Garcia, would risk everything, his job, his safety, even his daughter's future, to help a woman he barely knew expose a truth so explosive it would shake the foundation of an entire industry? This isn't a Hollywood thriller. This is the real story of how one man's simple act of kindness transformed into a battle against corruption that neither of them saw coming. A story about briefcases filled with secrets, powerful people who would stop at nothing to silence the truth, and the unlikely alliance between a blue-collar father and a corporate executive that would change both their lives forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights in the Meridian Tower hummed their familiar tune as Liam Garcia pushed his cleaning cart down the empty 42nd floor corridor. It was 11:47 p.m., and the prestigious pharmaceutical offices of Bellini Dynamics were as silent as a tomb. The kind of silence that comes with power lunches concluded, million-dollar deals signed, and executives long gone to their gated communities in the hills above the city. Liam had been working the night shift at Meridian Tower for 3 years. Now, ever since the divorce papers were finalized and he needed steady work with benefits. The building housed some of the most powerful companies in pharmaceutical research, financial consulting, and government contracting. During the day, these halls buzzed with the energy of people who moved markets and shaped policies. At night, they belonged to people like him, the invisible workforce that kept the machine running while the decision-makers slept. He didn't mind the solitude. In fact, he preferred it. The quiet gave him time to think, to process the challenges of raising 12-year-old Mia on his own, to plan for her upcoming science fair project, to worry about college funds and orthodontist bills. The night shift paid a premium, and every extra dollar mattered when you were the sole provider for a brilliant young girl who deserved every opportunity in the world. Tonight felt different, though. There was tension in the air, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Maybe it was the storm brewing outside. The weather service had predicted severe thunderstorms with possible tornado warnings. The wind was already howling against the floor-to-ceiling windows, and occasional flashes of lightning illuminated the city spread out below like a circuit board dot. As Liam rounded the corner toward the executive suites, he heard something that made him pause. A sound that didn't belong in the sterile quiet of the after-hours office building. At first, he thought it might be the wind, but as he listened more carefully, he realized it was human. Someone was crying, not the soft sniffling of someone who'd gotten emotional during a late-night phone call with a loved one. This was deeper, more desperate. The kind of crying that comes from a place of complete despair when someone has reached the absolute end of their rope and doesn't know how to tie another knot. Liam hesitated. His job was to clean offices and empty trash cans, not to get involved in the personal dramas of executives who made more in a month than he did in a year. The company policy was clear: be invisible, be efficient, and avoid any unnecessary interaction with clients or tenants. He'd seen maintenance workers fired for much less than inserting themselves into situations that weren't their business. But the sound was getting worse. What had started as crying was now evolving into something that sounded almost like panic. Hyperventilation mixed with what might have been words. Though he couldn't make them out from this distance, his conscience won the battle with his caution. Mia had been raised to help people when they were in trouble, and he couldn't very well teach her values he wasn't willing to live by himself. He secured his cleaning cart against the wall and walked quietly toward the source of the sound. The crying was coming from the direction of the corner office suite, the one with Iris Bellini, Chief Executive Officer, etched in elegant gold lettering on frosted glass doors. Liam had cleaned that office dozens of times over the past 3 years, though he'd only seen its occupant in person a few times. Dr. Iris Bellini was a legend in the pharmaceutical industry, a brilliant scientist turned CEO who had built Bellini Dynamics from a small research startup into one of the most influential companies in the world. The few times he'd encountered her during his shift, she'd been polite but distant, the kind of person who acknowledged his existence with a nod, but would never remember his name. That was fine with him. He understood the hierarchy of corporate America well enough to know that people like Dr. Bellini existed in a completely different universe from people like him. As he approached her office, the crying suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was almost more unsettling than the sound had been. Liam slowed his pace, wondering if perhaps the person had left through another exit, or if he'd been mistaken about the source of the sound. Then he heard a crash, not the sound of papers falling or a coffee mug being knocked over. This was the unmistakable sound of a human body hitting the floor with enough force to rattle the glass walls of the office. It was followed by a low moan that seemed to come from deep within someone's chest. All thoughts of company policy and appropriate boundaries evaporated from Liam's mind. Someone was hurt, possibly seriously, and he was the only person in the killing someone was hurt. Immediate area who could help. He quickened his pace and reached for his master keycard, the one that gave him access to every office in the building for cleaning purposes. The card reader beeped softly, and the lock disengaged with a quiet click. Liam pushed open the glass door and stepped into Dr. Bellini's office, his eyes adjusting to the dim light that filtered in from the city below. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Dr. Iris Bellini was lying crumpled on the floor beside her. Massive mahogany desk, her usually perfect business attire disheveled and stained. Her dark hair, typically pulled back in a severe bun, had come loose and hung in tangles around her face. But what caught Liam's attention most was the briefcase clutched against her chest like a shield, and the way her entire body was trembling. With what looked like exhaustion and terror, this wasn't just someone having a bad day or dealing with work stress. This was someone who had been pushed beyond their breaking point, someone who looked like they had been running from something. Or someone for a very long time. Lightning flashed outside the windows, illuminating the scene for a brief moment in stark dramatic detail. In that instant, Liam could see that Dr. Bellini's face was pale and drawn, her eyes wide with an expression that bordered on panic. There was something desperate and hunted about her appearance, as if she had been backed into a corner with no way out. She noticed him standing in the doorway and tried to pull herself into a sitting position, though her movements were unsteady and weak. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, hoarse with exhaustion and emotion. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for anyone to. You shouldn't be here. This isn't safe." The words sent a chill down Liam's spine. Not safe? What could possibly be unsafe about helping someone who was clearly in distress? But even as the question formed in his mind, he found himself stepping further into the office and closing the door behind him. Whatever was happening here, his instincts told him that discretion was probably the better part of valor. Outside, the storm was intensifying. Thunder rolled across the city like a warning, and the wind howled with increasing fury against the windows of the 42nd floor. Inside the office, two people from completely different worlds were about to embark on a journey that would change both of their lives forever. Neither of them could have imagined that this moment, this chance encounter in a darkened office during a thunderstorm, would be the beginning of a story that would eventually reach the highest levels of government and expose a conspiracy that threatened the lives of millions of people. But sometimes, the most important moments in our lives begin with the simplest acts of human kindness. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to ask, "Are you okay?" to set in motion events that will shake the foundations of power. Liam Garcia had seen plenty of medical emergencies during his 3 years working night shift at Meridian Tower. Heart attacks from overworked executives, diabetic episodes from people who skip too many meals, panic attacks from the stress of managing billion-dollar portfolios. But he had never seen anything quite like the state Dr. Iris Bellini was in as she struggled to pull herself upright behind her desk. Her hands were shaking so violently that she could barely maintain her grip on the briefcase, and there was a wild, haunted look in her eyes that spoke of someone who had been running on pure adrenaline for far too long. Whatever had happened to reduce one of the most powerful women in the pharmaceutical industry to this state, it was serious enough that she felt the need to warn a complete stranger that they weren't safe. Dr. Bellini, Liam said gently, taking a cautious step forward. My name is Liam Garcia. I work maintenance here. You look like you might need medical attention. Should I call 911? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She shook her head frantically, the movement so violent that it seemed to make her dizzy. No hospitals, no police, no official anything. They'll be monitoring all of that. They'll know exactly where I am the moment any kind of report gets filed. The fear in her voice was palpable, and it raised immediate questions in Liam's mind. Who was they? What kind of situation was she in that made her afraid of seeking normal medical attention? And why was she clutching that briefcase like it contained the crown jewels? Okay, he said, keeping his voice calm and reassuring. No official calls. But you're clearly not well. Can you tell me what's wrong? Are you injured? Are you sick? Dr. Bellini laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. It was the bitter laugh of someone who had discovered that everything they thought they knew about the world was wrong. Sick? No, Mr. Garcia, I'm not sick. I'm terrified. I'm exhausted. I'm probably about to lose everything I've worked for my entire life, but I'm not sick. She managed to pull herself into a more stable sitting position against the side of her desk, though she never loosened her grip on the briefcase. From this angle, Liam could see that she was indeed physically unharmed. No obvious injuries, no signs of illness. But her emotional and psychological state was clearly fragile. I haven't slept in 4 days, she continued, her voice gaining a little strength now that she was talking. I've been living on coffee and adrenaline, trying to figure out how to handle what I discovered. Trying to decide whether to run, whether to fight, whether to just pretend I never saw any of it and hope they don't realize I know. Know what? Liam asked, though part of him wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Dr. Bellini looked at him for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to determine whether he could be trusted with whatever secret she was carrying. Finally, she seemed to come to a decision. 3 months ago, I started noticing some irregularities in our research data. She began, her voice taking on the measured tone of someone who had rehearsed this explanation in her mind many times. Small things at first. Clinical trial results. That didn't quite match the raw data from our labs. Approval timelines that were expedited without proper documentation. Side effect reports that seemed to disappear from official filings. She paused to take a shaky breath before continuing. I thought it was just administrative errors at first. Sloppy record keeping, maybe some overeager employees cutting corners to meet deadlines. So I started digging deeper, trying to identify where the breakdowns in our processes were occurring. Lightning flashed outside again, casting dramatic shadows across the office. In the brief illumination, Liam could see the exhaustion etched into every line of Dr. Bellini's face. What I found, she continued, was systematic falsification of safety data across multiple drug trials. Not just for our company, but for dozens of pharmaceutical companies. A coordinated effort to rush dangerous medications to market by suppressing evidence of serious side effects. Liam felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. That's impossible. There are regulatory agencies, oversight committees, independent review boards. How could something like that happen on such a large scale? Dr. Bellini's expression grew even more grim. Because the regulatory agencies are part of it. Key personnel at the FDA, the CDC, even some members of Congress, they're all receiving payments through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. The whole system is compromised. She shifted the briefcase slightly, and Liam caught a glimpse of what looked like thick folders stuffed with documents. I have proof. Financial records, email communications, audio recordings of meetings where they discussed which safety concerns to suppress and which whistleblowers to discredit. Names, dates, amounts. Everything. The magnitude of what she was describing began to sink in. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance or regulatory capture. This was a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government, involving agencies responsible for protecting public health. If what she was saying was true, millions of people were being prescribed medications that had been approved through fraudulent processes. Why are you telling me this? Liam asked. I'm just a maintenance worker. I clean offices and empty trash cans. What could I possibly do to help you with something this big? Dr. Bellini smiled for the first time since he'd found her, though it was a sad, weary expression. Do you remember about 6 months ago when you stopped me from leaving my laptop unattended in the lobby while I went to get coffee? Liam thought back and vaguely recalled the incident. He'd been coming on shift when he noticed Dr. Bellini walking away from her laptop bag while talking on her phone. Given the high-security nature of the building and the sensitive information that many tenants dealt with, he'd gently suggested that she might want to keep her electronics with her. I remember, he said, basic security protocol. There are a lot of valuable things in this building. That laptop contained preliminary data from our Alzheimer's drug trials, Dr. Bellini explained. Information that would have been worth millions of dollars to our competitors. But more importantly, it contained some of the first evidence I'd gathered about the data irregularities. If that laptop had been stolen or compromised, I might never have been able to continue my investigation. She struggled to her feet, using the desk for support, but still maintaining her grip on the briefcase. You protected something important that day without even knowing it. You didn't have any obligation to help me, and you certainly didn't stand to gain anything from it. You just did it because it was the right thing to do. Liam was beginning to understand why she had trusted him with this information, but he was also beginning to realize the enormous responsibility that was being placed on his shoulders. So what happens now? What do you need from me? I need to get this information to someone who can act on it, Dr. Bellini said. Someone who isn't part of the corruption. Someone who has the platform and the credibility to make sure it gets the attention it deserves. But first, I need to get out of this building safely. As if summoned by her words, the sound of elevator doors opening echoed from the hallway outside. It was followed by the sound of footsteps, multiple sets of them, moving with purpose toward the executive suites. Dr. Bellini's face went white. They found me, she whispered. I thought I had more time, but they found me. The footsteps were getting closer, and Liam could hear the low murmur of voices. Professional voices, the kind that belonged to people who were used to handling serious situations with quiet efficiency. Is there another way out of here? Liam asked quietly. Dr. Bellini shook her head. The executive suites only have one entrance. But there's a service corridor that connects to the emergency stairs. If we can get to my assistant's office without being seen. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Liam understood that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. Whatever was in that briefcase, there were people who were willing to go to considerable lengths to get it back. And if they were found together, he would inevitably be drawn into whatever dangerous game Dr. Bellini was playing. But as he looked at her frightened face and thought about the magnitude of what she had described, he realized that some things were more important than personal safety. If she was telling the truth, if there really was a conspiracy that was putting millions of lives at risk, then helping her might be one of the most important things he'd ever done. Outside in the hallway, the voices were getting closer. Time was running out. The voices in the hallway were getting closer, and Liam could tell from their tone that whoever these people were, they weren't here for a friendly late-night chat. Dr. Bellini's face had gone from pale to ashen, and her grip on the briefcase had tightened to the point where her knuckles were white with strain. "This way," Liam whispered, moving toward a door he knew led to the administrative assistant's area. "Stay low and follow me." They crept across the office in a crouch, using Dr. Bellini's massive desk as cover. Liam's knowledge of the building's layout was proving invaluable. 3 years of cleaning these offices had given him an intimate familiarity with every corridor, every exit, every hiding place that most people never noticed. As they reached the door to the assistant's office, they could hear the voices more clearly. 3 men, maybe 4, speaking in low, professional tones about search patterns and potential escape routes. These weren't casual security guards doing a routine check. These were people who knew exactly what they were looking for and had experience finding people who didn't want to be found. "Dr. Bellini," one of the voices called out, and both Liam and Dr. Bellini froze. "We know you're in the building. We just want to talk. There's been a misunderstanding about some files that have gone missing from your office." Dr. Bellini looked at Liam with an expression that clearly said they both knew this wasn't about a simple misunderstanding. People didn't send search teams in the middle of the night to recover missing paperwork. Liam carefully opened the door to the assistant's office and peered out. The coast was clear, but he could see flashlight beams moving around in the main corridor. They had maybe 30 seconds before the search reached this area. "Can you move?" "Quickly," he whispered to Dr. Bellini. She nodded, though he could see that she was running on fumes. Whatever she had been through over the past 4 days had taken a serious toll on her physical reserves. They slipped into the assistant's office, and Liam immediately guided her toward a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." It led to the service corridors that most people in the building didn't even know existed, the maintenance areas, where the real work of keeping a modern office building functional took place. "How do you know about these areas?" Dr. Bellini whispered as they entered. "A narrow corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits." "I've been working here for 3 years, Liam replied, leading her toward what he knew was a rarely used emergency stairwell. "You learn things when you're responsible for maintaining a building. There are ways to get around that most people never see." As they moved through the service corridor, Dr. Bellini seemed to be studying him with new interest. 3 years, she repeated. "You've been here since 2021? "That's right. Started right after my divorce was finalized. Needed steady work with good benefits for my daughter." "Your daughter," Dr. Bellini said, and something in her tone made Liam glance back at her. "How old is she?" 12, Mia. She's in 7th grade. Wants to be a scientist like..." He trailed off, realizing the irony of the situation. "Like me." Dr. Bellini finished with a bitter smile. "I hope she chooses a different kind of science, something cleaner. Something where the pursuit of knowledge doesn't get people killed." They had reached the emergency stairwell, and Liam paused before opening the door. "Dr. Bellini, before we go any further, I need to know what I'm getting myself into. These people who are looking for you, how dangerous are they?" She was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. "Mr. Garcia, Liam, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound like something out of a conspiracy theory movie. But I need you to understand that everything I've discovered over the past 3 months has been verified through multiple sources." She shifted the briefcase to her other arm, and Liam noticed that despite her exhaustion, she never let it get more than a few inches away from her body. "The network I've uncovered isn't just falsifying safety data for financial gain," she continued. They're deliberately introducing compounds into medications that create long-term dependencies and health problems. The goal is to create a permanent patient population that will require increasingly expensive treatments for conditions that the medications themselves are causing. Liam felt his blood run cold. That would be mass poisoning. That would be genocide. Soft genocide, Dr. Bellini agreed grimly. Profitable genocide, and it's been going on for at least a decade, maybe longer. The people who are looking for me tonight, they're not just trying to protect corporate profits. They're trying to protect a system that's generated trillions of dollars by systematically making people sick. The magnitude of what she was describing was almost too large to comprehend. But as Liam thought about it, he realized that her explanation actually made sense of things he'd observed, but never connected. The epidemic of chronic diseases that seemed to be getting worse despite advances in medical technology. The way certain medications seemed to create as many problems as they solved. The revolving door between regulatory agencies and pharmaceutical companies. Why me? He asked again. With something this big, why are you trusting someone you barely know? Dr. Bellini looked at him directly, and for the first time since he'd found her, he saw something other than fear in her eyes. He saw determination. Because 9 months ago, you did something that made me pay attention to you, she said. Do you remember the night when there was a problem with the air conditioning system on this floor? Liam thought back. There had been a malfunction that had caused some of the offices to overheat while others became uncomfortably cold. He'd spent most of his shift trying to help the building engineers identify and fix the problem. I was working late that night, Dr. Bellini continued. Around 2 a.m., you came into my office to check the temperature readings. I was on a conference call with our research facility in Switzerland, discussing some concerning data about one of our diabetes medications. You probably thought I was just having a normal business conversation. She paused, and Liam could see that she was reliving that night in her mind. But when you were adjusting the thermostat, you heard me asking questions about side effects that weren't being reported to the FDA. Questions about why our European trials were showing different results than our American trials for the same drug. When you left my office, you could have easily sold that information to any number of people who would have paid handsomely for advance knowledge of potential problems with a major diabetes medication. Liam was beginning to remember the conversation she was referring to. He had overheard her expressing concerns about patient safety data, but it had never occurred to him that the information might be valuable to anyone else. Instead, Dr. Bellini continued, you continued doing your job as if you'd heard nothing at all. The next day, I had our security team do a background check on you. Not because I suspected you of anything, but because I was curious about someone who could overhear commercially sensitive information and simply ignore it. She shifted the briefcase again, and Liam noticed that they could no longer hear the voices from the office suites above them. Either the search team had moved to a different area of the building, or they had decided to wait for their targets to emerge. What I learned about you made me realize that there are still people in this world who can't be bought, Dr. Bellini said. Single father, working multiple jobs to support his daughter's education. No criminal record, no significant debts, no obvious pressure points that could be exploited. But more importantly, someone who had opportunities to profit from other people's secrets and chose not to. Liam was beginning to understand that this moment had been a long time in the making. Dr. Bellini hadn't chosen to trust him on impulse. She had been evaluating his character for months, possibly preparing for a situation exactly like this one. The people who are after me tonight have unlimited resources and connections at every level of government and industry, she continued. But they're looking for someone who fits a certain profile. Someone who can be intimidated, bought, or discredited. They're not looking for a night shift maintenance worker with a spotless record and nothing to hide. She looked directly into his eyes, and Liam could see the weight of responsibility she was trying to share with him. "I'm not asking you to save the world, Liam. I'm asking you to help me get this information to someone who can. Someone who has the platform and the credibility to make sure it reaches the right people. But I can't do it alone, and I can't trust anyone else." The sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere above them, reminding both of them that their pursuers hadn't given up the search. They needed to keep moving, but first, Liam needed to make a decision that would change the course of his life forever. 20 minutes later, Liam's 15-year-old Honda Civic was winding through the empty streets of downtown toward his apartment in the Oakwood district. Dr. Bellini sat in the passenger seat, still clutching her briefcase, her eyes constantly scanning the mirrors for any sign that they were being followed. The storm that had been threatening all evening had finally broken, and rain drummed steadily against the windshield. "Are you sure this is safe?" Dr. Bellini asked for the third time as they turned onto Maple Street. "I don't want to put your daughter in danger." "It's 1:30 in the morning," Liam replied, pulling into the parking lot of the modest apartment complex where he'd lived since the divorce. "Mia's been asleep for hours, and she's got school tomorrow. She won't even know you're there." But even as he said it, Liam was having second thoughts about bringing Dr. Bellini to his home. The magnitude of what she had told him was still sinking in, and the idea that he was now involved in something that could put Mia at risk made his stomach churn with anxiety. At the same time, he couldn't think of anywhere else to go. Dr. Bellini had made it clear that hotels were out of the question, too easy to track credit card usage, and too many security cameras. She couldn't go to any of her own properties or to the homes of friends and colleagues, since those would be the first places anyone would look. She needed somewhere completely off the radar, somewhere that had no obvious connection to her. Liam's modest two-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood was about as far off the radar as you could get. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, their footsteps muffled by the sound of rain and distant thunder. Liam fumbled with his keys for a moment before managing to unlock the door, and they stepped into the small living room that served as the heart of his and Mia's life together. The apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a single father working a night shift job. Functional, but not fancy. Clean but cluttered with the evidence of a busy life. School books and art supplies were scattered across the coffee table. A science fair project about renewable energy sources was taking shape on the dining room table. Photos of Mia at various ages decorated the walls, along with some of her artwork and a few certificates from academic competitions. Dr. Bellini looked around the space with an expression that Liam couldn't quite read. Was it surprise, curiosity, judgment? After spending her life in executive offices and luxury settings, his humble apartment probably looked quite different from what she was used to. "You have a lovely home," she said quietly, and Liam was surprised to hear that she sounded sincere. "It's not much," he replied, hanging his jacket on a hook by the door. "But it's ours. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be wonderful if it's not too much trouble." As Liam moved toward the kitchen, he heard a door opening down the hallway. A moment later, Mia appeared in the living room doorway, rubbing her eyes and looking confused. She was wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with planets and stars that she'd had since she was 10 but refused to give up, and her dark hair was sticking up at odd angles from sleep. "Dad?" she said, her voice thick with drowsiness. "I heard voices. Is everything okay?" Liam felt his heart skip a beat. He'd hoped to get Dr. Bellini settled without waking Mia, but his daughter had always been a light sleeper. She'd inherited that trait from her mother, along with her curiosity and her tendency to worry about other people. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he said, trying to keep his voice calm and normal. "This is Dr. Bellini. She works at the building where I have my job, and she needed a place to stay tonight. There was a problem with her apartment. It wasn't entirely a lie, though. It wasn't entirely the truth either. But Liam had learned that sometimes protecting the people you love meant shielding them from information they weren't ready to handle. Mia looked at Dr. Bellini with the frank curiosity that 12-year-olds possessed in abundance. She took in the expensive but disheveled clothing, the exhausted expression, the way the woman was holding onto her briefcase like it contained something precious. "Are you okay?" Mia asked, addressing Dr. Bellini directly. "You look really tired." Dr. Bellini smiled, and for the first time since Liam had found her, it looked like a genuine expression of warmth rather than a polite social gesture. "I am very tired," she admitted. "I've been having some problems at work, and it's been keeping me awake at night." Mia nodded with the serious expression she got when she was processing complex information. "My dad says that when grown-ups have problems at work, it's usually because someone isn't being fair or someone isn't telling the truth." "Is someone not being fair to you?" The question was innocent, but it hit remarkably close to the heart of the situation. Dr. Bellini looked at Mia with something approaching amazement, as if she couldn't believe that a 12-year-old had managed to distill such a complex situation down to its essence. "Something like that," Dr. Bellini said carefully. "There are some people who haven't been telling the truth about some very important things, and I'm trying to figure out how to make sure the truth comes out." Mia considered this for a moment, then walked over to the bookshelf where she kept some of her favorite possessions. She pulled out a small notebook, the kind with a rainbow cover that could be found at any dollar store, and flipped through several pages before finding what she was looking for. "My mom used to say that the truth is like seeds," Mia said, reading from what was apparently a collection of her mother's sayings that she'd written down. "Even if you plant them in rocky ground, they'll find a way to grow if you take care of them. But lies are like weeds. They grow fast, but they don't have deep roots, so they're easy to pull up if you know where to look." Dr. Bellini's eyes filled with tears, and Liam felt his throat tighten with emotion. Sarah had died when Mia was 9. But her wisdom lived on in the things she'd taught their daughter about integrity, compassion, and courage. "Your mother sounds like she was a very wise woman," Dr. Bellini said. "She was a teacher," Mia replied matter-of-factly. "She taught 5th grade, and she always said that the most important thing she could teach kids wasn't math or reading or science. It was how to tell the difference between truth and lies, and how to be brave enough to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary." The words hung in the air for a moment, and Liam could see that they had affected Dr. Bellini deeply. Here was a child who had distilled the essence of moral courage into a simple lesson about truth and lies, seeds and weeds. "Mia," Liam said gently, "Dr. Bellini has had a very long day, and you have school tomorrow. Why don't you get back to bed, and we'll talk more in the morning." But Mia wasn't quite ready to go. She looked at Dr. Bellini with the serious expression she got when she was trying to solve a complex problem. "Dad," she said, "if Dr. Bellini's trying to make sure the truth comes out about something important, and there are people who don't want her to, then she's kind of like a whistleblower, right? Like the people we studied in history class who told the truth about things that were wrong, even though it got them in trouble." Liam exchanged a glance with Dr. Bellini, amazed once again by his daughter's ability to understand situations that most adults would find confusing. "Something like that," he said. Mia nodded, as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. Then she walked over to Dr. Bellini and looked up at her with a direct gaze that had always been one of her most distinctive characteristics. "My mom also used to say that when someone's trying to do the right thing, it's everybody's job to help them," Mia said. "Even if it's scary, even if it's hard. Because if good people don't help each other, then the bad people win." She turned back toward her bedroom, then paused in the doorway. "Dr. Bellini, I hope the truth seeds you're trying to plant grow really big and strong. And I hope the people who are lying get their weeds pulled up." With that, she disappeared down the hallway, leaving Liam and Dr. Bellini alone in the living room with the weight of a 12-year-old's moral clarity hanging in the air between them. Dr. Bellini wiped tears from her eyes and looked at Liam with an expression of wonder and gratitude. "Your daughter," she said quietly, "is remarkable. She gets that from her mother," Liam replied, though he felt a surge of pride at the recognition of Mia's special qualities. "No," Dr. Bellini said, looking around the modest apartment with new appreciation. "She gets that from both of them. And now I understand why you're the right person to help me with this. It's not just about your integrity or your knowledge of the building or your ability to fly under the radar." She looked toward the hallway where Mia had disappeared, then back at Liam. "It's because you're raising the kind of person who will inherit the world I'm trying to protect. And that gives you a stake in this fight that goes beyond anything they could threaten you with." Outside, the storm was beginning to subside, but inside the apartment, the real work was just beginning. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, with the kind of persistent rain that seemed to wash the color out of everything. Liam had managed only 2 hours of restless sleep before his alarm went off, signaling the start of what he knew would be one of the most important days of his life. Dr. Bellini had spent the night on the living room couch, though Liam suspected she hadn't slept much either. When he emerged from his bedroom, he found her sitting at the dining room table with her briefcase open in front of her, surrounded by neat stacks of documents, photographs, and what looked like computer printouts. "Good morning," she said, looking up from a folder thick with papers. "I hope you don't mind. I couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd organize everything while it was quiet." Liam poured himself a cup of coffee and looked at the materials spread across his dining room table. Even from a distance, he could see that this wasn't ordinary office paperwork. There were bank statements, email printouts, what looked like laboratory reports, and photographs of documents that appeared to have been taken covertly. "Is this everything?" he asked. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," Dr. Bellini replied grimly. "What you're looking at represents 3 months of careful investigation, but the conspiracy itself goes back at least 10 years, possibly longer." She gestured to one of the stacks of papers. "These are financial records showing payments from pharmaceutical companies to regulatory officials at the FDA, CDC, and NIH. The payments are disguised as consulting fees, speaker honoraria, and research grants. But they're actually bribes to ensure that certain drugs get approved regardless of their safety profiles." Liam sat down across from her and picked up one of the bank statements. The numbers were staggering, individual payments in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, with some officials receiving multiple payments per year from different companies. "This stack," Dr. Bellini continued, pointing to another group of documents, "contains internal communications between pharmaceutical executives, discussing which side effects to suppress, which studies to discredit, and which researchers to blacklist if they refuse to cooperate. She handed him a printed email that made his blood run cold. The subject line read, "Cardiac complications, Statinol XR," and the body of the message was a casual discussion between 2 executives about hiding evidence that a popular cholesterol medication was causing heart attacks in certain patient populations. "They knew," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They knew their medication was killing people, and they covered it up." "That's just one example," Dr. Bellini said. "I have similar evidence for dozens of medications currently on the market. Diabetes drugs that cause liver failure, antidepressants that increase suicide rates in teenagers, blood pressure medications that cause kidney damage. In every case, the manufacturers knew about the problems and chose to hide them rather than pull the drugs from the market." The sound of Mia's alarm clock echoed from down the hallway, followed by the familiar sounds of a 12-year-old getting ready for school. Liam glanced at his watch. 7:15 a.m. In normal circumstances, This would be the time when he'd be making breakfast and helping Mia prepare for another day of 7th grade. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Dad," Mia's voice called from the kitchen. "Are you making pancakes today?" "Just cereal this morning, sweetheart," Liam called back. "We're running a little behind schedule." Dr. Bellini began gathering up the documents, clearly intending to hide them before Mia came into the dining room. But Liam stopped her with a gentle gesture. "She's going to ask questions anyway," he said quietly. "And she's smart enough to know when adults are hiding something important from her. Maybe it's better to give her some version of the truth." When Mia appeared in the dining room a few minutes later, dressed for school and carrying her backpack, she immediately noticed the papers spread across the table. Her eyes took in the official-looking documents, the serious expressions on both adults' faces, and the way Dr. Bellini seemed to be protecting the materials. "Is this about the work problem you mentioned last night?" she asked Dr. Bellini. "Yes," Dr. Bellini replied, clearly choosing her words carefully. "I discovered that some people at my company, and at other companies like mine, haven't been honest about the safety of some medications. People could get hurt because of these lies, and I'm trying to figure out how to make sure the right authorities know about it." Mia absorbed this information with the serious expression she got when processing complex adult issues. Like medications that doctors give to sick people. Exactly like that. So if people take these medications thinking they'll help them get better, but the companies know they might actually make them sicker, that's really bad, right? That's like lying about something that could hurt people. Dr. Bellini nodded. "That's exactly what it is." Mia walked closer to the table and looked at one of the documents, a laboratory report with rows of numbers and medical terminology that would be meaningless to most 12-year-olds. But Mia had always been interested in science, and she'd inherited her mother's ability to see patterns and connections that others missed. "Dr. Bellini," she said after studying the report for a moment, "if you know about these lies, and you have proof that the companies are hurting people, why don't you just tell the police or the government people who are supposed to stop things like this?" It was the logical question that any child would ask, and Dr. Bellini's answer would help determine how much truth she was willing to share. Because some of the government people who are supposed to stop things like this are part of the problem, Dr. Bellini explained. They're taking money from the companies to look the other way when bad things happen. Mia's eyes widened as the full implications of this sank in. So the people who are supposed to protect everyone are actually helping the bad guys. Some of them, yes. Mia was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then she looked at her father with the expression she got when she was trying to solve a difficult math problem. "Dad, if the regular people who are supposed to help can't help, then what do you do? How do you stop the bad guys when they have all the power?" It was a profound question that got to the heart of the situation they were facing. Liam looked at Dr. Bellini, then back at his daughter. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "ordinary people have to be brave enough to do extraordinary things, even when it's scary, even when it's dangerous." Mia nodded slowly. "Like the people we learned about in social studies class who helped escape slaves even though it was against the law. Or the people who hid Jewish families during the Holocaust even though they could get in trouble. Something like that, Liam." Agreed. Dr. Bellini was watching this conversation with fascination, clearly amazed by Mia's ability to grasp complex moral concepts and draw parallels to historical examples. "Mia," she said, "what would you do if you were in my situation? If you knew about something terrible that was happening, but telling the truth about it might put you and the people you cared about in danger." Mia thought about this for a moment, then looked at the documents spread across the table. "I think," she said slowly, "that if people are getting hurt because of lies, then telling the truth is more important than being safe. Because if you don't tell the truth, more people will get hurt. And if everyone who knows the truth decides to stay quiet, because they're scared, then the bad guys win. She paused, then added, but I also think you shouldn't have to do it alone. I think when someone's trying to do the right thing, other people should help them, even if it's scary. Dr. Bellini's eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table to squeeze Mia's hand. Your daughter, she said to Liam, has just articulated the moral foundation of every civil rights movement in history. Mia looked pleased but also slightly confused by the compliment. I just think lying about things that hurt people is wrong. And I think adults who know about bad things happening should try to stop them. The school bus honked outside, signaling that Mia's time for philosophical discussions was over. She gathered up her backpack and headed toward the door, but paused in the hallway. Dr. Bellini, if you decide to tell the truth about the bad companies, I hope it helps a lot of people get better, and I hope the people who were lying get in big trouble. After Mia left for school, Liam and Dr. Bellini sat in silence for several minutes, both of them processing the moral clarity that a 12-year-old had brought to their complex situation. She's right, you know, Dr. Bellini said finally. About all of it. The truth is more important than safety. People shouldn't have to fight injustice alone, and the lies I've discovered are directly responsible for people getting hurt. She picked up one of the folders and handed it to Liam. This contains documentation of over 400 deaths that could have been prevented if the pharmaceutical companies had been honest about known side effects. 400 families who lost loved ones because profits were more important than people. Liam opened the folder and found himself looking at a spreadsheet with names, ages, causes of death, and corresponding medications. Mary Rodriguez, 67, heart attack, statinol XR. James Patterson, 45, liver failure, diabetrol. Sarah Chun, 23, suicide. Mood lifter. Each line represented a life cut short by corporate greed and regulatory corruption. What do we do now? Liam asked. Dr. Bellini closed her briefcase and looked at him with determination. We follow your daughter's advice, she said. We tell the truth, we don't do it alone, and we make sure the bad guys don't win. The morning that had started with quiet determination and moral clarity was shattered at 10:47 a.m. by the sound of Liam's cell phone ringing. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but something about the timing made his blood run cold. Dr. Bellini, who had been reviewing financial documents at the dining room table, looked up sharply when she heard the phone. Don't answer it, she said immediately. Let it go to voicemail. But the phone stopped ringing only to start again immediately. Same unknown number. When it rang a third time, Liam realized that whoever was calling wasn't going to give up easily. Mr. Garcia? The voice was smooth, professional, with the kind of calm authority that came from years of experience handling difficult situations. My name is Robert Hoffman. I'm head of security for Bellini Dynamics. I believe you have something that belongs to us. Liam's mouth went dry. He looked at Dr. Bellini, who had gone pale and was shaking her head frantically. I'm sorry, Liam. Saad, trying to keep his voice steady. I think you have the wrong number. I don't know anything about Mr. Garcia, Hoffman interrupted, his tone remaining polite, but taking on an edge that suggested patience was wearing thin. Let's not waste each other's time. We know that Dr. Bellini left the building with you last night. We know she's carrying proprietary company documents. And we know she's currently at your apartment in the Oakwood district. The words hit Liam like a physical blow. How could they possibly know where Dr. Bellini was? How could they know about his involvement? He'd been so careful to avoid security cameras, to use routes through the building that weren't monitored. We're not interested in causing trouble for you, Hoffman continued. You're clearly an innocent party who got caught up in something you don't understand. Dr. Bellini has been under tremendous stress lately, and we're concerned about her mental state. She's taken some confidential files that could be misinterpreted by people who don't understand the context. Dr. Bellini was writing something on a piece of paper, her movements urgent and desperate. She held it up for Liam to see. They're lying. I'm not crazy. Don't trust them. All we want, Hoffman went on, is to get Dr. Bellini the help she needs, and to recover the company property she took. If you cooperate with us, there won't be any consequences for you. You can go back to your job, your life with your daughter. Everything can return to normal. The mention of Mia sent a spike of fear through Liam's chest. It wasn't just that they knew about her existence. The way Hoffman had said, your life with your daughter carried an unmistakable undertone of threat. What exactly are you asking me to do? Liam asked, though he was pretty sure he already knew the answer. Simple, Hoffman replied. Convince Dr. Bellini to come in voluntarily. We'll send a car to pick both of you up. We'll have a calm, rational conversation about this situation, and everyone can move forward. No police involvement, no media attention, no disruption to anyone's life. Dr. Bellini was shaking her head vigorously and writing another note. If I go with them, I'll disappear. The evidence will disappear. People will keep dying. And if I refuse? Liam asked. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Hoffman spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. Mr. Garcia, let me be very clear about your situation. You're currently harboring a fugitive who stole classified corporate documents. That's a federal crime. More importantly, you're putting your daughter at risk by involving yourself in something you don't understand. The threat was no longer subtle. They were making it clear that Mia could be used as leverage if necessary. Your daughter attends Roosevelt Middle School, Hoffman continued, and Liam felt his knees go weak. She walks to the bus stop at 7:45 every morning. She has science class with Mr. Peterson at 2:15 every afternoon. She's a bright girl with a promising future. It would be a shame if that future were to be compromised. Because her father made poor decisions. Liam's hands were shaking now, both from fear and from rage. These people weren't just threatening him, they were threatening to hurt an innocent 12-year-old to get what they wanted. You have 1 hour to decide, Hoffman said. At noon we'll call again. If you're ready to cooperate, we'll arrange pickup. If not, well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. The line went dead, leaving Liam staring at his phone with a mixture of terror and fury. They know everything, he said to Dr. Bellini. They know where Mia goes to school, what time she walks to the bus stop, who her teachers are. How is that possible? Dr. Bellini's face was grim. Because they have access to databases that ordinary people don't even know exist. Medical records, school enrollment data, credit reports, social media activity, cell phone location tracking. The pharmaceutical industry has partnerships with data brokers and technology companies that give them unprecedented surveillance capabilities. She stood up and began pacing the small living room, her movements agitated and desperate. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she continued. They don't just have money and political connections. They have the tools of a police state at their disposal. They can track anyone, anywhere, at any time. Liam sat down heavily on the couch, his mind racing through possible options. All of them seemed to end with either Dr. Bellini disappearing forever or Mia being hurt because of his involvement. Maybe you should go with them, he said quietly. Maybe that's the safest thing for everyone. No, Dr. Bellini said firmly. Liam, you heard what your daughter said this morning. If everyone who knows the truth decides to stay quiet because they're scared, then the bad guys win. 400 people are already dead because I didn't act sooner. How many more will die if this evidence disappears? She sat down across from him and leaned forward, her expression intense. I know you're scared for Mia. I understand that, and I respect it. But think about this. How many children like Mia are going to lose their parents to medications that these companies know are dangerous? How many families are going to be destroyed by drugs that create more problems than they solve? Before Liam could respond, his phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Roosevelt Middle School, and his heart nearly stopped. "Mr. Garcia?" The voice belonged to Mrs. Rodriguez, the school secretary. "This is Roosevelt Middle School. I'm calling because there was an incident involving your daughter this morning." Liam's vision blurred, and he felt like he might be sick. "What kind of incident? Is she hurt?" "Oh, no," Mrs. Rodriguez said quickly. "She's not hurt." But she came to the office around 10:30, saying that a man approached her during recess and asked her questions about her home life. When she told him she needed to talk to a teacher, he left quickly. "We've reported it to the police, but we wanted you to know right away." Relief flooded through Liam, followed immediately by renewed anger. They had actually sent someone to his daughter's school. They had approached a 12-year-old girl as a way to send him a message. "Is she okay?" he asked. "She's fine," Mrs. Rodriguez assured him. She handled the situation exactly right. She didn't engage with the stranger and reported it immediately. "But we'd like you to come pick her up early today, just as a precaution." After hanging up, Liam looked at Dr. Bellini with a mixture of fear and determination. "They sent someone to her school," he said. "They actually approached my daughter." "Doctor." Bellini's eyes flashed with anger. "That's escalation beyond anything I expected. They're not just threatening anymore, they're actively intimidating a child." Liam stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street where he'd thought his daughter was safe. The normalcy of the scene, neighbors going about their daily routines, children playing in yards, delivery trucks making their rounds, seemed surreal given what he now knew about the forces arrayed against them. "I have to go get Mia," he said. "And then I have to decide whether to turn you over to them or figure out how to fight back." Dr. Bellini joined him at the window. "Liam, I want you to understand something. What happened at Mia's school this morning? That's a preview of what these people are capable of. They didn't hurt her today because they don't need to yet. But if we don't stop them, they'll hurt thousands of children through the medications they're hiding the truth about." She turned to face him directly. "I can't make this decision for you. You have to choose between protecting one child you love and protecting thousands of children you'll never meet. But I can tell you this, if you help them silence me, Mia will grow up in a world where corporations can poison people with impunity, where regulatory agencies are bought and paid for, where truth-tellers disappear and nobody asks questions." Liam was quiet for a long moment, processing the impossible choice he was being forced to make. Then he remembered something Mia had said that morning. If everyone who knows the truth decides to stay quiet because they're scared, then the bad guys win. His daughter had already given him the answer. The question was whether he had the courage to follow her wisdom. "Okay," he said finally. "We fight back. But first, I'm going to get Mia and make sure she's safe. Then we figure out how to expose these people before they can hurt anyone else." Dr. Bellini nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "Liam, you need to understand that once we cross this line, there's no going back. They'll use every resource at their disposal to stop us. Our lives will never be the same." Liam thought about Mia's face when she talked about truth being like seeds that would grow even in rocky ground. He thought about the 400 names on that spreadsheet, each representing a family that had lost someone they loved. He thought about the man who had approached his daughter at school and the message that encounter was meant to send. "Then we better make sure we succeed," he said. Outside, the gray morning was giving way to an even grayer afternoon. And Liam Garcia was about to discover just how much courage an ordinary person could find when the people they loved were threatened. The war between truth and power was about to begin in earnest. Roosevelt Middle School sat on a tree-lined street in one of the older neighborhoods of the city, its red brick buildings and well-maintained playgrounds representing the kind of stable, nurturing environment that Liam had dreamed of providing for Mia when he'd moved to this district after the divorce. As he pulled into the visitor parking lot, he tried to calm the rage that had been building in his chest since Mrs. Rodriguez's phone call. The fact that these people had brought his daughter into their game was unforgivable. But what made it even worse was the calculated nature of their approach. They hadn't hurt Mia, they'd simply made sure she knew she could be hurt. It was psychological warfare designed to break his resolve without crossing lines that might bring unwanted law enforcement attention. Mia was waiting for him in the principal's office, sitting in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs that seemed to be standard equipment in schools everywhere. When she saw him, her face lit up with relief, but he could see traces of confusion and worry in her expression. "Dad," she said, jumping up to hug him. "Mrs. Rodriguez said you were coming to get me early. Is everything okay?" "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Liam said, though the lie felt heavy on his tongue. "I just thought it might be good for us to spend some time together this afternoon." The principal, Dr. Martinez, was a woman in her 50s who had been running Roosevelt Middle School for over a decade. She had the kind of calm, competent demeanor that came from years of dealing with everything from budget crises to family emergencies. "Mr. Garcia," she said, extending her hand. "I'm glad you could come so quickly." Mia handled the situation very well, but we always take these kinds of incidents seriously. She gestured for them to sit down in her office, a space that managed to be both professional and welcoming, with photos of graduating classes covering one wall and student artwork decorating the others. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Liam asked. Dr. Martinez consulted a note on her desk. "According to the playground supervisor, a man approached Mia during recess around 10:30. He appeared to be in his 30s, well-dressed, carrying what looked like a clipboard. He introduced himself as someone conducting a survey about family life in the neighborhood." Liam felt his jaw clench. A survey. They'd disguised their intimidation as market research. He asked Mia several questions about her home life. Dr. Martinez continued. Where she lived, whether her parents worked, what her family did for fun. Standard questions that someone conducting a legitimate survey might ask, but inappropriate to ask a student without proper authorization from the school and parental consent. Mia spoke up. He seemed really interested when I mentioned that my dad works at the big office building downtown. He asked if my dad ever brought work home, or if we ever had visitors who talked about business stuff. The sophisticated nature of the approach sent another chill through Liam. This wasn't random intimidation, it was intelligence gathering. They were trying to figure out how much Mia knew about her father's involvement with Dr. Bellini. What did you tell him? Liam asked, trying to keep his voice casual. I told him that my dad doesn't usually bring work home, because he's a maintenance person, not a business person, Mia replied. And I said that we don't usually have visitors, because it's just the two of us most of the time. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. Mia did exactly the right thing. When the man started asking more specific questions about your work schedule and whether you ever brought colleagues home, she told him she needed to talk to a teacher and walked away. By the time the playground supervisor went to speak with him, he had left the area. Did anyone get a description of him? A license plate number? Liam asked. The playground supervisor said he was driving a dark sedan, but she didn't get the plate number. Professional appearance, no distinguishing features. The type of person who would blend in easily in most environments. Exactly the kind of person a security company would send to intimidate a family without leaving evidence that could be traced back to them. After completing the necessary paperwork and ensuring that the school would be on heightened alert for any future incidents, Liam and Mia left Roosevelt Middle School and headed home. During the drive, Mia was unusually quiet, staring out the window with the thoughtful expression she got when she was processing complex information. Dad, she said finally, That man at school, he was connected to Dr. Bellini's problem, wasn't he? Liam considered lying to her, but he'd already learned that Mia had an uncanny ability to see through adult deceptions. More importantly, she had a right to know when she was being targeted because of her father's choices. Yes, he said. I think he was. Mia nodded, as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. So the people who are trying to stop Dr. Bellini from telling the truth, they're trying to use me to make you scared? The simplicity and accuracy of her assessment was both impressive and heartbreaking. No 12-year-old should have to understand the dynamics of psychological intimidation. Something like that, Liam admitted. Are you scared? She asked. Liam thought about how to answer that question honestly. Yes, he said finally. I'm very scared. Not just for myself, but for you. These people have a lot of power, and they're willing to use it to protect their secrets. Mia was quiet for several blocks, then said, Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. If you help Dr. Bellini tell the truth about the bad companies, could we get in trouble? Like, serious trouble. Liam pulled into their apartment complex parking lot and turned off the engine before answering. This was the conversation he'd been dreading, but it was also the conversation that would determine the course of their lives. Yes, he said, we could get in serious trouble. These people have connections to government agencies, law enforcement, even judges. They have unlimited money and they're fighting to protect billions of dollars in profits. If we go up against them, we might lose everything. Mia unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't get out of the car. What would happen to the people who are getting hurt by the bad medications if Dr. Bellini can't tell the truth? They would keep getting hurt, Liam said. More people would die from drugs that the companies know are dangerous. More families would lose people they love. How many people? Liam thought about the spreadsheet Dr. Bellini had shown him that morning. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Mia was quiet for a long time, staring at the apartment building where Dr. Bellini was waiting for them to return. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but determined. Dad, do you remember what Mom used to say about hard choices? Liam smiled sadly. She used to say that if a choice was easy, it probably wasn't important. And if a choice was hard, it was probably the right thing to do. I think this is one of those hard choices, Mia said. I think helping Dr. Bellini is scary and dangerous. But I also think it's the right thing to do. She looked at her father with eyes that seemed much older than 12. I don't want those people to hurt our family. But I also don't want us to be the kind of people who let bad things happen, because we're too scared to try to stop them. Liam felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. His daughter was showing the kind of moral courage that most adults spent their entire lives trying to find. Are you sure? He asked. Because once we make this choice, we can't take it back. Our lives are going to change in ways we can't predict. Mia nodded firmly. I'm sure. Besides, if we help Dr. Bellini and something bad happens to us, at least we'll know we tried to do the right thing. But if we don't help her and people keep dying from the bad medications, we'll have to live with knowing we could have stopped it, but didn't. They sat in the car for another moment, father and daughter, both understanding that they were about to cross a line that would change everything. Then Mia opened her door and stepped out into the gray afternoon. Come on, Dad, she said. Let's go help Dr. Bellini plant some truth seeds. As they walked toward their apartment building, Liam realized that his 12-year-old daughter had just made one of the most important moral decisions of both their lives. And she had made it with a clarity and courage that humbled him. Whatever happened next, he was proud to be her father. By the time Liam and Mia returned to the apartment, Dr. Bellini had transformed their dining room into what looked like a war room. The documents from her briefcase were organized into distinct piles, each labeled with a piece of masking tape: financial evidence, internal communications, safety data, regulatory corruption, and victim documentation. She had also set up Liam's laptop and appeared to be working on some kind of digital presentation. How did it go at the school? She asked immediately, looking up from the computer screen. They sent someone to question Mia during recess, Liam replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. Disguised as a survey researcher asking about our family life. Dr. Bellini's face darkened. That's beyond anything I thought they would do. Approaching a child directly ... She shook her head. These people have no boundaries. Mia walked over to the dining room table and looked at the organized documents with curious eyes. Is this all the proof about the bad medications? This is most of it, Dr. Bellini confirmed. Though there's a lot more evidence still stored on secure servers that I haven't been able to access since they revoked my company credentials. Dr. Bellini, Mia said, her voice taking on the serious tone she used when she was about to say something important. My dad and I talked about everything in the car. We want to help you tell the truth, even if it's dangerous. Dr. Bellini looked at Liam with surprise and something that might have been relief. Are you certain? After what happened at the school today, I would understand if you wanted to walk away. We're certain, Liam said firmly. But we need to do this smart. These people have resources we can't match, but they also have vulnerabilities. What's our best chance of getting this information to someone who can act on it? Dr. Bellini minimized the document she'd been working on and pulled up what appeared to be a contact list on the laptop screen. I've been thinking about that all morning, she said. The traditional routes, SFDA whistleblower offices, congressional oversight committees, even most mainstream media outlets are compromised. Too many of the key players are either on the payroll or too dependent on pharmaceutical advertising revenue to risk serious investigation. She scrolled through the list, pointing to various names and organizations. But there are still some independent journalists in smaller news organizations that can't be bought. People who have built their careers on exposing exactly this kind of corruption. The trick is getting the information to them in a way that can't be intercepted or suppressed. Mia had been listening to this conversation with growing excitement. What about the internet? Can't you just put everything online so that everyone can see it? Dr. Bellini smiled. That's actually not a bad idea. The problem is that simply posting documents online doesn't guarantee anyone will pay attention to them. We need a coordinated approach that ensures the information reaches credible journalists and advocacy organizations simultaneously. She turned back to the laptop and opened what appeared to be an encrypted communication application. I've been in contact with 3 investigative journalists who specialize in pharmaceutical industry corruption, she explained. Sarah Chunnett, the independent health reporter, Michael Torres at the Medical Accountability Project, and Dr. Rachel Kim at the Transparency Institute. All 3 have been investigating various aspects of regulatory capture, but none of them have had access to the kind of comprehensive evidence we have here. Liam looked at the clock on his phone. It was 11:30 and 30 minutes before Hoffman's deadline for their decision. How long will it take to get everything to them? He asked. If we work fast, about 2 hours, Dr. Bellini replied. The documents need to be scanned, organized into a coherent narrative, and encrypted before transmission. But once it's sent, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Mia had wandered over to the window and was looking down at the parking lot with a worried expression. Dad, she said quietly, there's a black car parked across the street. The man inside is watching our building. Liam and Dr. Bellini rushed to the window. Sure enough, a dark sedan was parked at the curb with a clear view of their apartment building entrance. Through the windshield, they could see the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat. They're not waiting for the deadline, Dr. Bellini said grimly. They're moving to contain the situation now. Liam's phone rang. Hoffman again. Mr. Garcia, the smooth voice said when Liam answered. I see you've returned home. I hope your daughter's early dismissal from school wasn't too disruptive to your day. The casual mention of Mia's school situation made Liam's blood boil, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to resolve this situation before it gets out of hand," Hoffman replied. "My associate has been watching your building for the past hour. He's noticed an unusual amount of activity in your apartment, lights on during the day, movement near windows, what appears to be document organization. It seems like Dr. Bellini is preparing to do something rash." Dr. Bellini was frantically typing on the laptop, apparently trying to expedite the document transfer process. "I'm going to make this very simple," Hoffman continued. "You have 15 minutes to bring Dr. Bellini and the documents downstairs. My associate will escort both of you to a secure location where we can have a rational discussion about resolving this misunderstanding. If you're not downstairs in 15 minutes, we'll be forced to take more direct action." "What kind of direct action?" Liam asked, though he was afraid he already knew. "The kind that involves multiple agencies and a great deal of publicity," Hoffman said. "Dr. Bellini is currently in possession of classified corporate documents. That's industrial espionage, Mr. Garcia, a federal crime that carries significant prison time. Do you really want to expose your daughter to the trauma of watching her father arrested for corporate espionage?" The line went dead, leaving Liam staring at his phone with a mixture of fear and fury. 15 minutes, he told Dr. Bellini. She looked up from the laptop, her face pale but determined. "I can get the core documents to all 3 journalists in 10 minutes if we work together. Sarah, Michael, and Rachel are all online now, and they're standing by to receive the files." "What do you need us to do?" Liam asked. "Mia, can you help me organize these documents in the order I call them out?" Dr. Bellini asked. "Your dad can scan them while I prepare the accompanying explanations." For the next 8 minutes, the 3 of them worked with desperate efficiency. Mia sorted documents with the precision of someone much older than 12, while Liam fed papers through his small home scanner as fast as the machine could process them. Dr. Bellini typed furiously, creating executive summaries and explanations for each batch of evidence. "Financial evidence is sent," Dr. Bellini announced. "Michael Torres has confirmed receipt and is already reviewing the bank records." 3 minutes later, internal communications are sent. Sarah Chun says she recognizes some of the names from her previous investigations. With 1 minute left before Hoffman's deadline, safety data and victim documentation are sent. "Dr. Kim is connecting us with families of some of the people on the casualty list." Dr. Bellini hit the final send button and closed the laptop just as they heard footsteps on the stairs outside their apartment. "It's done," she said, her voice filled with exhaustion and relief. "Whatever happens to us now, the truth is out there. 3 independent journalists have everything they need to expose this conspiracy." The footsteps stopped outside their door, followed by a firm, authoritative knock. "Mr. Garcia," Hoffman's voice called from the hallway, "time's up. Please open the door." Liam looked at Dr. Bellini, then at Mia, who was standing by the window with her chin raised in an expression of determined courage. "Are you ready?" he asked them both. Dr. Bellini nodded. "Whatever happens next, we did the right thing." Mia walked over and took her father's hand. "Mom always said that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are scared." Liam squeezed his daughter's hand, then walked to the door. Before opening it, he turned back to look at the woman who had trusted him with the most important secret of her life, and the girl who had shown him what real moral courage looked like. "Together," he said. Then he opened the door to face whatever consequences awaited them on the other side. The point of no return had been crossed. The truth was now beyond anyone's ability to contain, and 3 unlikely allies had just started a fight that would shake the foundations of an entire industry. When Liam opened the door, he found himself face to face with 3 men in dark business suits. Robert Hoffman stood in the center, A man in his late 40s with steel gray hair and the kind of cold, calculating eyes that belonged to someone who had spent years solving problems that other people preferred not to think about. Behind him stood two younger men who had the unmistakable bearing of professional security operatives. "Mr. Garcia," Hoffman said, with a thin smile that never reached his eyes. "Thank you for being reasonable. Dr. Bellini, I trust you're feeling better after your episode last night." Dr. Bellini stepped forward, her posture straight and defiant despite the exhaustion that marked her face. "I'm feeling clear-headed. For the first time in months, Mr. Hoffman, clear enough to understand exactly what you and your associates have been doing to people." Hoffman's smile faded slightly. "Dr. Bellini, you're clearly under a great deal of stress. The documents you took contain highly technical information that could be easily misinterpreted by people without the proper scientific background. We're here to help you understand the context of what you think you've discovered." "I understand the context perfectly," Dr. Bellini replied. 400 people are dead because your network has been systematically suppressing safety data and bribing regulatory officials. That's not a misinterpretation, that's mass murder. One of the security operatives took a step forward, but Hoffman raised a hand to stop him. "Dr. Bellini, you're making very serious accusations that could result in significant legal consequences. For yourself. Defamation, industrial espionage, breach of fiduciary duty, these are federal crimes that carry substantial prison sentences." Mia, who had been standing quietly beside her father, suddenly spoke up. "Excuse me," she said in the polite but firm tone she used when addressing adults who weren't treating her with appropriate respect. "Are you the people who sent someone to my school to ask me questions about my family?" Hoffman looked down at her with surprise, clearly not expecting to be confronted by a 12-year-old. "Young lady, I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Mia interrupted, her voice growing stronger. "A man came to my school and asked me personal questions about my dad and whether we have visitors who talk about business. That's called intimidation, and it's illegal to threaten kids." The directness of her challenge seemed to throw Hoffman off balance. He was clearly prepared to deal with frightened adults, but not with a child who was willing to call him out directly. "Mia," Dr. Bellini said, stepping beside her, "would you like to know what these men are really afraid of?" "Dr. Bellini," Hoffman warned, his voice taking on a sharp edge, "I strongly advise you not to involve this child in matters she can't possibly understand." "She's already involved," Dr. Bellini replied. "You involved her when you sent someone to her school, but unlike you, I'm going to tell her the truth." The truth. She knelt down to Mia's eye level. "These men work for companies that make medicines that are supposed to help sick people get better. But instead of making sure the medicines are safe, they've been hiding information about dangerous side effects so they can make more money." Mia's eyes widened with a mixture of shock and anger. "So they're like people who sell food they know is poisoned but lie about it being safe." "Exactly like that," Dr. Bellini confirmed. Hoffman's patience was clearly wearing thin. "That's enough. Dr. Bellini, you're coming with us now. Mr. Garcia, you're also going to accompany us to answer some questions about your role in this theft of corporate property." "What about my daughter?" Liam asked. "Arrangements will be made for her care while you're being debriefed," Hoffman replied, his tone suggesting that those arrangements might not be pleasant. That was when Dr. Bellini smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. "Mr. Hoffman," she said, standing up and facing him directly, "I think you should check your phone." Hoffman looked confused but pulled out his smartphone. As he glanced at the screen, his face went pale. "What is this?" he demanded. "That, Doctor," Bellini said with satisfaction, "is a text alert from Google News. It seems that several independent journalists have just published simultaneous exposes about pharmaceutical industry corruption. The headline on the Independent Health Reporter reads, "Leaked documents expose decade-long conspiracy to hide drug safety data." Hoffman's fingers moved frantically across his phone screen, his expression growing more alarmed by the second. The Medical Accountability Project is calling it the largest regulatory capture scandal in FDA history, Dr. Bellini continued. And Dr. Rachel Kim at the Transparency Institute has already identified 12 specific medications that should be immediately recalled pending safety reviews. One of the security operatives leaned over to look at Hoffman's phone, and Liam could see his face change as he read the headlines. "The evidence is already public, Mr. Hoffman," Dr. Bellini said. "Your threats are meaningless now. In fact, anything you do to us at this point will only draw more attention to the story." Hoffman's carefully controlled demeanor was cracking. "You have no idea what you've done. This goes beyond just pharmaceutical companies. There are national security implications, international trade agreements, diplomatic relationships." "I know exactly what I've done," Dr. Bellini interrupted. "I've told the truth about a conspiracy that has killed hundreds of people and would have killed thousands more if it had been allowed to continue." Liam's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed unknown, but something told him to answer it. "Mr. Garcia?" The voice belonged to a woman he didn't recognize. "This is Sarah Chun from the Independent Health Reporter. Dr. Bellini asked me to call this number if the situation became dangerous. Are you and your family safe?" Liam looked at Hoffman, whose face had gone from pale to ashen as he realized that the journalists weren't just publishing the story. They were actively monitoring the safety of their sources. "We're fine," Liam said loudly enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. "We're currently speaking with some representatives from Bellini Dynamics who wanted to discuss Dr. Bellini's recent disclosures." "Excellent," Sarah Chun replied. "I should mention that we've already been in contact with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit and the Department of Justice's Corporate Fraud Task Force. They're very interested in speaking with Dr. Bellini about her evidence." Hoffman took a step backward, and Liam could see him calculating his rapidly diminishing options. "Mr. Hoffman," Dr. Bellini said quietly, "your employer sent you here to silence a whistleblower and recover evidence of criminal activity. But the evidence is now in the hands of federal law enforcement, and the story is already being read by millions of people. Your mission has failed." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Hoffman gestured to his associates, and the three men turned and walked toward the stairway without another word. As their footsteps faded down the stairs, Mia looked up at her father and Dr. Bellini. "Is it over?" she asked. Dr. Bellini sat down heavily on the couch, the adrenaline finally leaving her system. "The dangerous part is over. The legal part is just beginning. But yes, sweetheart, we won." Outside, they could hear car doors slamming and engines starting as Hoffman and his team retreated. Inside the apartment, three people who had chosen courage over comfort sat in the quiet satisfaction of knowing they had done something that mattered. The truth was now unstoppable, and the world was about to change. 6 months later, the cherry trees that lined the walkway to the new Congressional Investigative Committee building were in full bloom, their pink petals drifting like snow across the plaza, where protesters had once demanded accountability from pharmaceutical companies. Now, those same companies were implementing court-mandated reforms under the oversight of a newly established Patient Safety Commission. Liam Garcia stood at the window of his corner office on the 10th floor, watching the morning commuters hurry past below. The brass nameplate on his desk read, "Liam Garcia, Director of Whistleblower Protection Services," a position that had been created specifically for him after his testimony before Congress had helped expose the largest pharmaceutical corruption scandal in American history. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of congressional hearings, media interviews, and legal proceedings. 12 pharmaceutical companies had paid billions in fines. 47 executives had been indicted on federal charges. and the entire structure of drug safety oversight had been rebuilt from the ground up. Most importantly, over 30 medications had been recalled or reformulated after independent safety reviews revealed the dangerous side effects that had been hidden for years. "Dad?" Mia's voice came from the doorway of his office. She was 13 now, taller and more confident, but she still had the same direct gaze and thoughtful expression that had helped guide them through their darkest moments. "Dr. Bellini is here for the lunch meeting." Dr. Iris Bellini appeared behind Mia, looking healthier and happier than she had in years. She had left the pharmaceutical industry entirely and now served as the chief scientific advisor for the Patient Safety Commission, where she worked to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. "Iris," Liam said, gesturing for her to sit in one of the comfortable chairs near his desk. "How did the morning session go?" "Better than expected," Dr. Bellini replied, settling into the chair with a satisfied expression. The Transparency in Drug Testing Act passed the Senate by a vote of 78 to 22. Every clinical trial will now be required to publish all safety data publicly, regardless of the results. Mia perched on the edge of Liam's desk, her notebook in hand. She had been documenting the progress of pharmaceutical reform for a school project that had evolved into something much larger, a book about how ordinary people could make extraordinary changes when they chose courage over comfort. "What does that mean for people who are taking medications?" Mia asked, her pen poised over her notebook. "It means that doctors and patients will have access to all the information they need to make informed decisions," Dr. Bellini explained. "No more hidden side effects, no more suppressed safety data. Every drug that goes to market will have been tested with complete transparency." Liam walked over to a wall that was covered with letters, photos, and newspaper clippings. There were thank you notes from families whose loved ones had been saved by the medication recalls, pictures from the ceremony where he'd received the Courage and Truth-Telling Award from the American Medical Association, and articles about the new federal protections for corporate whistleblowers. But the item that meant the most to him was a small, framed drawing in the center of the wall. It showed a little girl planting seeds in rocky ground while a man and woman watched approvingly. At the bottom, in Mia's careful handwriting, were the words, "Truth seeds grow everywhere if you take care of them." "Dr. Bellini," Mia said, looking up from her notebook, "do you think we really change things? Like, not just for now, but for always?" Dr. Bellini considered the question carefully. "I think we planted seeds that will keep growing long after we're gone. The laws we helped create, the oversight systems we helped design, the culture of transparency we helped establish, those things will protect people for generations." She paused, then smiled at Mia. "But the most important thing we changed was proving that ordinary people can stand up to the most powerful institutions in the world and win. Every time someone sees corruption and chooses to speak up instead of staying silent, they'll be following the example you and your father set." Liam's assistant knocked on the door and peeked in. "Mr. Garcia? The 2 o'clock delegation from the European Union is here. They want to discuss implementing similar reforms in their member countries." "Tell them I'll be right there," Liam replied. Then he turned to Dr. Bellini and Mia. "Want to sit in on this one? They're particularly interested in hearing from the person who first broke the story." As they walked down the hallway toward the conference room, Mia asked, "Dad, do you ever miss our old life? When things were simpler and we didn't have to worry about congressional hearings and international delegations?" Liam thought about their modest apartment in the Oakwood district, the quiet nights when his biggest concern was helping Mia with her homework, the simple routine of his maintenance job at Meridian Tower. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but then I think about all the people who are alive today because we chose to speak up. All the families who didn't lose someone they love because dangerous medications were taken off the market. All the patients who can now make informed decisions about their treatment because they have access to complete safety data. He put his arm around Mia's shoulders. Our life is more complicated now, but it's also more meaningful. We get to wake up every day knowing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Double quotes. Dr. Bellini nodded in agreement. And we get to work together to make sure that truth and transparency aren't just ideals. They're the foundation of how medical research and drug safety are handled in this country. They reached the conference room, where representatives from 12 European Union countries were waiting to learn about the American pharmaceutical reform model. As they took their seats at the large table, Liam reflected on how much had changed since that stormy night when he'd found Dr. Bellini collapsed in her office. The scared, exhausted woman clutching a briefcase full of evidence had become a respected advocate for patient safety. The maintenance worker who just wanted to help someone in distress had become a nationally recognized expert on corporate accountability. And the 12-year-old girl who had seen the situation with perfect moral clarity had become a 13-year-old who was writing a book about courage and truth-telling. Before we begin, one of the European delegates said, "I'd like to express our admiration for what you've accomplished here. The pharmaceutical industry is global, and the reforms you've implemented are already having positive effects in our countries as well." As the meeting progressed and Liam listened to discussions about international cooperation on drug safety oversight, he thought about something Mia had written in her book. The truth is like light once you let it shine in one place, it spreads everywhere, making everything brighter. Outside the conference room windows, the cherry blossoms continued to fall, marking the end of one season and the beginning of another. Inside, a group of people who had chosen courage over comfort continued the work of making sure that truth would always be stronger than the forces that tried to suppress it. Some victories weren't measured in dollars or headlines, but in lives saved and families protected. Some heroes weren't famous or powerful, but were ordinary people who refused to stay silent when silence would allow harm to continue. And sometimes, the most important lessons came from 12-year-olds who understood that truth seeds really could grow anywhere as long as someone was brave enough to plant them. The work continued, but the foundation had been laid. Truth had won, and the world was a safer place because 3 unlikely allies had chosen to stand up for what was right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.